We are officially back in festival season for 2023, and that means it's time for some special indie showcases. For today's episode, this is going to be all the games that I played during Ludonarracon 2023. We are starting things off with Cryptmaster. This is a dungeon crawler meets Typing of the Dead with a pinch of Wordle thrown in for good measure. We are exploring a crypt with a mysterious guide along with 4 reanimated bodies of warriors. In order to get out, we're going to have to type our way to victory. The twist of this one is that every skill that your 4 characters have is a word that you need to type in. You'll need to figure out those words by gathering letters and fighting off enemies. Combat will involve you having to go through each one of your character's abilities and trying to do damage against the enemy. If they, of course, hit your character so many times, they are going to die. Besides that, you'll have to spell out and figure out different puzzles based on clues your Cryptmaster will give you, all while exploring this very snarky world. I really enjoy this one. I think this may be my winner of Ludonarracon right here. It's a very ingenious take on the dungeon crawler, and the aesthetic kind of like that pencil, or even like what I remember from Mad World aesthetic, really does give it a unique look to it. I don't know really how much the spelling aspect of this game is going to hold up over lengthy plays, especially when you get multiple abilities for each character, but there's definitely something special here, and if you're a fan of dungeon crawlers and typing, this is definitely one to check out. We now turn to Tamarindos' freaking dinner, and wait, something about this footage doesn't seem right. I don't think this is the actual game. Wait. Let me see what's going on here. Alright, sorry about that, folks. So, this is described as a horror comedy set in kind of the weirdest 90s parody one can imagine. You play as a pizza boy who has been sent to a strange manor to deliver pizza when you unfortunately discover that you're going to be on the menu instead of the pizza. In order to get out, you'll need to explore a time loop in order to figure out how to deal with each one of the guests, solve puzzles, and try not to die in a myriad of ways. So the game is definitely going all over the place in terms of charm and design. I was getting some very heavy feelings from playing Betrayal at Club Low from last year with this one. The main issues I have with this game, the first one is that at the moment the PC version that we play definitely has some optimization issues. We're having some frame rate loss, and just like the general moving around was starting to really give me a headache due to kind of the perspective and just how things were undulating and moving as we were playing. This one is definitely going to be an interesting one to check out. If they can nail the time loop aspect and the puzzle solving while keeping that 90s, I guess, quote-unquote charm, this could be a freaking dinner worth exploring. But if you're looking for a game that definitely is something you have not played before, then this is certainly one worth checking out. We now turn to Demonschool, a tactical strategy meets RPG with a touch of Persona thrown in for good measure. When our school seems to be invaded by demons, ghosts, and apparently gangsters, it's up to 4 radical teenagers to figure out what's going on and beat the you-know-what out of any ghosts and, of course, gangsters that stand in their way. So the tactical layer here is quite interesting. You have a pool of action points you see in the bottom right there that you will use or divvy up between your 4 characters. Each character will have different abilities and so on that will activate as they either run into an enemy or run into characters. Each time you move a character, other than horizontally or left and right for the first time, will raise the AP cost of subsequent moves. So you're going to have to balance sending someone to do a lot of damage or getting away with the fact that you want your other characters to be doing stuff as well. After your turn, the enemies will go, and you repeat until you complete the mission. Now, it's a little tricky to understand at the moment. I think the tutorial was a little hard to make out like what was going on. This does get compounded when there are multiple enemies, each with different effects that they'll do on their turn, all proccing in different orders. After each combat, you'll explore the grounds of the school, go on various events, and so on. The controls here were a little bit weird. Like, it wasn't letting me click my way out. It seems like the game really wants to be played through keyboard or possibly gamepad rather than using the mouse. But this game certainly has an interesting style to it, and I'm really curious to see where it's going to go in terms of any kind of progression, leveling, and even just where the story is going to end up with more of these demons showing up in school. So, if you're looking for another kind of tactical RPG style game to play, this is definitely one to check out, with the demo still available I believe right now. After all those unconventional games, it's time for one that is a little bit more that we've seen before, and that is the Invincible. This is based off of a sci-fi novel by, according to the store page, Stanislaw Lem, which I'm pretty sure I just butchered his name. Our story is that we are on a far distant alien world as part of a scouting expedition team. When, of course, as per normal, something goes horribly wrong, we'll remember what happened, and now the entire crew is spread out, and we're going to need to figure out how to get everyone back using the power of adventure game puzzle solving and collecting items. I like the aesthetic of the game. It's described as quote-unquote atom punk, as you'll have to figure out what items you're going to need and where you're going to have to go. Now, with that said though, it does look like it's going to be a very linear game. I don't know from what we played of this demo just how much variance or actual decision making you're going to have. This is another game where there were some technical issues and we're having some major frame loss or FPS loss as we're moving around. Speaking about moving, this game also commits unfortunately the adventure game's sin of making movement really slow. And I'm hoping that things will be made a little bit smoother to explore in the finished version. But if you're looking for a first-person adventure game with a very interesting setting and story, I would at least check out The Invincible. And now for something that is definitely a little bit different. It is Sucker for Love, Date to Die For. This is the sequel to the surprisingly hit visual novel adventure game, which reimagines all Lovecraftian gods as incredibly hot babes that you're trying to date. For the sequel, we have returned home to our town after a mysterious note from our parents who apparently disappeared. Something is going on with cultists roaming the streets, and we discover a strange book that lets us summon a Lovecraftian god, who turns out to be a very attractive goat woman and the goddess of fertility. And things will only get stranger from there, as you'll need to figure out how to stay alive, stay sane, and maybe score a hot date at the end of all this. So this is one of those games where, again, the horror comedy is like someone flipping a switch rapidly as you play it. Now, the first game had some very interesting puzzles, and it did get quite unique in terms of the gameplay near the end of it. I don't know where the second game is going to go in terms of any kind of complexity or depth, but it certainly has that humor, and this is one of those games that you're going to know just by looking at it for a few minutes whether you're going to keep going on this date or you're going to turn tail and run. If you're a fan of the first game, this is probably going to be an easy recommendation for you to check out. If you're completely new to the Sucker for Love concept, then I would at least check out the first game first before deciding to go on a second date. For our next game, we turn to Kitsune. And this is one that I'm not quite sure where their gameplay is going to go, as the store page tags weren't really being all that descriptive. From the demo, this appears to be an adventure game, kind of in the similar look of a survival horror title with fixed camera angles. However, I really do love the art style and general aesthetics of this game. It's really trying to evoke the almost like Studio Ghibli effect with its look. As we play this one, your main theme is going to be exploring this island with your talking frog friend, trying to figure out how to get off the island itself. But there are demons around, cat people, and other weird things abound here. I'm, again, kind of at a loss in terms of where this one is going to go. Again, the art style is definitely selling me on the game, but I am interested to see kind of where the gameplay is going to reach. It's going to be more of a puzzle side, more of an action side, etc. But if you're looking for a game with a very great aesthetic to check out, then this is certainly one that may pique your interest. And now for Astronaut the Best. This is a kind of management sim wacky kind of game. We are the runner of a space program in a fictional country who have been demanded to get our astronauts to space or we get killed. And to help us, we have the spirit of the country and very dubious potential astronaut candidates that we're going to have to train and work with. So the game itself definitely gives off like that 90s like Ren and Stimpy vibe with some of these character models. But our mission, or missions, is to decide how people will train, rest, or otherwise throughout the day. This will affect their stats, and these stats will come back during events to determine the possible success chance. We can also deal with the 5 different priests and priestesses that you see at the top of the screen. How we respond to their requests and their demands will affect their relationship to us. This will impact events as well as getting additional money, which we'll then need to use for doing more stuff. So the game itself is certainly on the strange side, as you'll never know what your astronauts will deal with. Maybe they're actually a lizard person in disguise. Maybe they actually hate to go into space. We won't know. But the game itself is definitely set up as one of those how strange is it going to get kind of titles. So it's another game where I'm really curious to see where things are going to end up in terms of the story and what other aspects it'll have to the gameplay. So if you're looking for a management style game with a very healthy dose of weird, then you should definitely check out Astronaut the Best. We now turn to Loco Motive. This is a point-and-click adventure game. We are the lawyer to a fabulously wealthy widow who, on a train ride announcing who's going to get her inheritance, we go through, I guess, the quote-unquote murder tunnel, and she ends up getting stabbed. And as her lawyer, we are considered suspect number 1. In order to prove our innocence, we're going to do what all adventure game protagonists are going to do, and that is collect various objects, solve puzzles, and try not to get stabbed along the way. So this is definitely in line with the LucasArts Monkey Island era of adventure games. I really love the animation, just the general quality of the pixel art that this game has. In terms of the design, again, this is definitely classic 90s adventure games. So you're going to be looking for all myriad of miscellaneous items that will inevitably aid you in your puzzle solving, talking to all these strange inhabitants of the train, and again, pointing and clicking your way to hopefully success. Puzzle complexity seems to be, I would say, moderate to maybe moderate challenging, at least from the demo. Again, if you have any experience with the adventure genre, Loco Motive shouldn't prove to be that much of a brain teaser, at least from what we saw. And I'm hoping that in the retail version that there will be voice acting, because it kind of hinted at that at the end of the demo, but it was a little awkward not hearing any random musings voiced. But with that said, this is looking like it's going to shape up to be another fantastic point-and-click adventure game. So if you are someone who likes your mysteries filled with intrigue, clicking, and item grabbing, definitely check out Loco Motive. And with that, we are halfway done our Ludonarracon showcase. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the rest of the games that I played during this. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. We now turn to Slay the Princess. This is a visual novel, I guess, horror, choose-your-own adventure. All we know is that we are on a path to a mysterious cabin in the woods. There's a princess chained up there, and it's our job to, well, as the title suggests, slay her. However, things quickly take a strange turn, as our decisions and choices will not only impact the world around us, but the princess herself. And the game is definitely set up heavily around the choose-your-own-adventure theme, with each chapter being completely altered or changed depending on your choices in the previous one. And as you go through, the game will definitely take very different turns based on how things play out. One experience could be, well, very, very horrific. Another one could be more on the humorous, lighthearted side. And again, it's all going to be about how you make your choices. Now, with this being, again, very story and decision-making dependent, I'm trying to only show kind of like B-roll or random footage here for this point. My only concern about this game is whether or not the developer can kind of stick the landing and make each path feel legitimately different in terms of the story and how things will play out. And I'm not quite sure, at least from the demo, how the decision making or the decision tree is going to branch out from chapter 2 and onward. But if you don't mind your horror with your visual novel, I think this could be a fantastic game and a really clever premise on the whole choose your own adventure theme. We now have Do Not Feed the Monkeys 2099. This is the sequel to, of course, Do Not Feed the Monkeys. It is the far future now, and we are now dealing with aliens, robots, and more in our universe, as we do our best to voyeuristically examine what is going on. As per the first game, you're going to start out just watching people live their various lives, or aka the monkeys in their cages. But eventually, you'll be able to interact with them, if you want, and kind of mess with their lives. Now, admittedly, from playing the demo, I really wasn't feeling this one. It felt like it was a little bit too slow. I wasn't quite sure, like, what I was supposed to be intending to do interactivity-wise. And the demo definitely set up to be, again, a game meant for people who already played through the first one. But this is one of those games that definitely does something differently, and if you haven't checked out the first game, I would recommend at least looking into that one before looking into some more futuristic monkey cages. We now have Forever Lost. This is a kind of escape room adventure puzzle style game, in similar vein of stuff like The Room and other adventure games along those lines. We wake up with no memory in a mysterious hospital that apparently every door and everything around has a puzzle associated to it. And in order to figure out what is happening, we are going to have to explore, solve lots of puzzles, and collect a lot of items. Now, this one is a little bit on the interesting side. They're definitely leaning heavily towards adventure game logic and adventure game exploration. My major issue with the game is that the UI is a bit on the cumbersome side at the moment. You have a camera that you can take out using right click to take photos, but it can be very weird in terms of interacting with the world itself. You can also kind of paste those photos on the screen, which that I really do like as a quality of life feature for trying to remember some of the clues for puzzles. We also had some issues with frame rate loss and stuttering as we were moving around, but there's definitely some good aspects here if you're looking for a very puzzle-heavy game. Again, this is definitely going to be on the harder side for puzzles and for trying to find out what you're supposed to be doing. But again, if you are looking for a brain teaser / brain melter, then this could be a good one to check out when it is further along. We now have Times and Galaxy. This is an adventure game meets journalism game. We play as the first robotic reporter working for the Times and Galaxy newspaper. It's up to us to go around the galaxy investigating stories and putting together snappy headlines and columns about what is happening in the strange and alien galaxy we live in. So, unlike some of the other adventure games we've shown off on this video and some that you've played, we are not solving puzzles and collecting items. Instead, we're gathering intelligence and trying to put together a very snappy scoop for our paper. How this game works is that each investigation will involve you going through a scene. You're looking to gather information about what's going on, get sources, and so on. Every time you find something of note, you see the exclamation kind of headline in the upper right. This will allow you to put together a story based on all the collected information. And it's going to be up to you to decide how you build your story. Do you make it very saucy? Do you go for a just the facts? However you decide will impact the readership and how the paper will develop. It's a very interesting angle for an adventure game. Now, the one thing is that I didn't really get to see from the demo how this will create, or if it will create like permutations or variants. Like, does it affect future cases? Is it all just going to be built around like whatever ending you get? And so on and so forth. But it's definitely a very different way of playing an adventure game. And if you're looking for one where you're not going to be picking up items, but picking up words, then this could definitely be a game worth checking out the scoop on. We now have the Star Named EOS. I'm not sure how to completely pronounce that. This is an adventure game where our mother, a famous photographer, has gone missing. And in order to track her down, we are going to have to rediscover the world and our love of photography in order to do it. Each scene takes place in its own self-contained room. You'll need to figure out the solutions and the situations needed to recreate a photograph, which will then teleport you or transport you to the next area. So this game is definitely more in line with the escape room style of puzzle design, where the room itself is completely open and you're going to have to discover what are the actual puzzles in said room, what keys or hints you have for each puzzle, and kind of figure out the general order you're going to be trying to solve everything in. So it can be a little bit on the tricky side. You'll need to figure out again what hints and clues correspond to which puzzles. The aesthetics are certainly very charming, and this is certainly a low-stakes game. You're not going to be doing anything, I think, too, horrific in this one. But it certainly has charm to it, and if you're looking for, I would say this one's going to be moderately challenging to possibly challenging puzzle design, all wrapped up with what will most likely be a very heartwarming story, then this is certainly one worth checking out. We now have Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. So this is a visual novel by way of musicals. We play as Grace, who discovers that she has a very magical power that will involve her interacting with various gods in order to figure out what is going on and to hopefully save her life and the life of her friends. This is definitely on the line of a visual novel. You're going to be making various decisions as to how Grace responds, and how she'll develop her own music talent, which will then, of course, be on display with the various musical numbers. Now, from an aesthetic standpoint, I was hoping for, like a little bit more, theatrics in terms of when the actual musicals start playing. I don't know there'll be anything more done in that front in the main version. But this is a game that is definitely designed for fans of musicals, and as someone who is certainly not a fan of musicals, this game fell flat for me. So, if you are a fan of stories told through singing, I would definitely check this one out, but if you're not a fan, I don't think this game is going to change your mind in that respect. We now have Dead Pets Unleashed. This is a kind of slice of demon life management sim. We play as a group of demons in their 30s trying to get their struggling punk rock band off the ground while also dealing with the pressures and challenges of daily life. This is not going to be the game about you trying to, kill monsters or devour souls, but more like making sure your rent is paid, and then you show up for your minimum wage job on a day-to-day basis. So the aesthetic of this game, I think, is really quite charming. And one thing to point out that this is definitely not a game for kids. There is certainly a lot of profanity, and the game does warn of some very mature situations in some of the episodes. So the game itself is kind of played as a variety of minigames, with each challenge doing its own thing, from running a restaurant to having to actually do your rhythm punk rock band. It's definitely a very interesting game, and it's one that I'm curious about where it's going to go in terms of how your stats and decision making will matter, and again, where the story itself will lead. So if you're looking for a game that can be both very lighthearted and very mature at the same time, then Dead Pets Unleashed could be an interesting game worth checking out. We now turn to Roadwarden, a text-based RPG. You play as the titular Roadwarden, a person who goes out into this dark and dangerous fantasy world at the request of various people and groups. Your mission is to explore an area, not only trying to figure out where the previous Roadwarden went, but also complete goals set by the guild that has hired you. So this game itself is entirely text-driven. While you do have the illustrations you see on the left-hand side giving you some frame of reference, everything is going to be all about reading and making decisions. Your character can have different abilities, you can choose what gear and items they'll have, and you'll need to keep them alive and of course fed in order to explore the world. Depending upon what decisions you make, how you build your character will also impact what choices you'll have at certain points, such as being able to use magic skills to get past an obstacle, use sword, alchemy, and so on. This is a game that the world itself is definitely the star, as you'll learn more about the strange land you're in, the customs, people, and monsters around. If you're looking for a Dark Souls or a very action-heavy experience, Roadwarden is definitely not that game. If you're a fan of kind of like adventure books, RPG books, and just kind of really taking in and soaking up the atmosphere and lore of a world, then this is definitely a game worth checking out. We now have 1000X Resist. This is a adventure game that's described, quote-unquote, as a hyper-cinematic game. It is the very, very far future. All humanity is dead except for one, who is now known as the All-Mother. We play as one of the several AIs in her service, and we discover a very disturbing secret involving her and what happened to the rest of humanity. And in order to uncover the dark truth, we want to explore the remnants of her memory and the history, or what could have happened to the rest of humanity. So the game itself is built around kind of a third-person adventure exploration. Your key element of puzzle solving is being able to adjust the time period that you're looking at. This will affect what obstacles are there, who you're able to talk to, that kind of thing. The story is certainly going to be an interesting one. I am sure going to be on the mature side as well. In terms of other gameplay systems, there was this element of kind of like grapple hooking around a space in order to find like specific areas to go to. And I don't know if there's going to be more kind of gameplay systems or mini games in the finished game. But it's certainly a game that has a very interesting story to tell, and I would say that if you're looking for something that is a little bit off the beaten path for an adventure game, then this could be one worth looking at. For our final game of the Ludonarracon showcase, this is Harmony: The Fall of Reverie. This is a choose-your-own adventure game that takes the kind of conversation trees and dialogue nodes to the most logical and most, I guess, gamified conclusion. We play as Polly, who, after returning home to find her mother missing, we uncover the world of Reverie. In here, it is powered by beings that represent various emotions and ambitions of humanity. Something has gone horribly wrong, and the fates of both worlds are now in our hands. In order to save everyone, we need to make decisions that will affect the lives of our friends, loved ones, and the world itself. So, the game itself is one ginormous choose-your-own adventure dialogue tree, represented by the various nodes. Each act is made up of chapters. Each chapter is made up of varying situations. Each situation is in the form of a dialogue with one or more characters. At different points in the kind of conversation map, you will need to make a choice. This will determine how the story will play out, as well as getting access to these kinds of crystals that represent the various forces of Reverie. When you get to the end of an area or the end of an act, the crystals that you've picked up along the way will determine what ending you will get, which in turn will affect the next act, and so on and so forth. So this is definitely a game that's going to be built on a lot of the permutations and different routes and endings that you will do to see where the story is going to end up. I don't know if there is going to be a quote-unquote true ending to this game, but it's definitely going, again, similar to when I talked about Slay the Princess earlier, in terms of having a lot of different ways of playing. I really like the aesthetics and art of this game. The voice acting is well done. I like how animated and visually different each one of the characters are. With that said, I'm not sure if there is going to be any actual gameplay interaction beyond just making the decision on each one of the nodes. And I'm curious to see if there are going to be nodes or ways of manipulating the decision tree as the game goes on. Because the game talks about having these nodes that affect kind of different events or give you different things, and that could be something worth checking out. So, Harmony: The Fall of Reverie is definitely a game for someone who really likes the choose-your-own adventure model. The fact that it's all laid out as neatly and organized as it can be on the decision tree does make it easier to comprehend and try different things. And if you like this style, then I think this is definitely one worth looking into. But at long last for this video, we are done with Ludonarracon. Just in time, as Tacticon 2023 should be around the corner. And by the time you're watching this, future Josh should be collecting demos for that. So thank you so much for watching. You will find links to every game down below. If you'd like me to tackle your game for a future stream and video, please reach out. Do all the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do, visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily sessions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.